Well, hi everyone, and welcome to another truck hardware installation tutorial. Today we're installing universal Gatorback Mud Flaps on a 2014 Ford F-150. The universal Gatorback Mud Flap is a fantastic product, and it is, just as it sounds, a universal flap. The downside of that is it can be a little more challenging to install. And so today we're going to walk you through what that looks like. The mud flap is made of heavy-duty virgin rubber. It has hidden T-nuts, which is going to protect from rusting, and it's also made in Canada. Well, this installation will be broken down into 4 basic parts: height, alignment, drilling, and fastening. In addition, there'll be a few minor steps, but for the most part, those are the 4 you need to remember. With all that in mind, remember, this video is intended to be a companion to the instructions provided and not a standalone. It's intended to help direct and guide and hopefully problem solve any potential issues on your path to installing your brand new Gatorback mud flaps. Begin the installation by turning the front wheels. This should give you more room to work. If your vehicle was equipped with factory mud flaps, you're going to have to take those off. In this case, there were 2 factory screws holding the stock mud flaps in place up top, and a third push pin, or in some cases a bolt on the bottom. All 3 of these will need to be removed. Note that you should keep the top 2 screws, as we're going to use those again later. As far as the bottom push pin or fastener is concerned, once the mud flap is off, you can reinstall it. Now that you have the factory mud flap off, we can move on and set the height. When it comes to setting the height, there are a couple variables to keep in mind. First of all, consider the legal requirements where you live. You want to ensure that the mud flap has the maximum amount of coverage of your wheel. As such, setting it lower is going to be more effective. In the case that you've already installed your Gatorback mud flaps on the opposite side, remember to take a complete measurement so that your mud flaps are both symmetrical in their height. We like to use a tape measure and a felt pen to leave a mark and ensure that we're setting our mud flaps just where we want them. Once you have your mark set, you're ready to put the mud flap in position. We use a block of wood to wedge the mud flap right where we want it so that it's in line with our mark. Once you have the mud flap wedged in place, double check your height before you move on to installing a screw. When it comes to installing self-tapping screws, take a moment to look at the lip that you're provided on your particular vehicle. The photo in the animation is of a Ford F-150, and as you can see, there are a couple areas where installing self-tapping screws could be an issue. If you take a look at the bottom, you'll see that there's an area denoted with red. That's a good example of a more difficult area to install a self-tapping screw. Whereas just above it, in the green zone, you can see the lip is nice and thick, and there's a lot of metal for which a self-tapping screw can bite into. Now that you're aware of some of the pitfalls of installing a self-tapping screw, go ahead and install a self-tapping screw at or near the top of the mud flap, as close as you can to the height marker that you've identified. Now that you have one fastener holding the mud flap in place, it's time to move on and set our angle. When it comes to setting the alignment, remember you always want to ensure maximum coverage of your tire. Ensuring that your mud flap is aligned to provide maximum coverage of your tire is going to help you get the most performance out of your Gatorback mud flaps. When it comes to setting the alignment, we put the truck on a level surface and use a square. There is, however, an element of using your eye for fine-tuning the alignment. Once you are happy with the alignment of your mud flaps, go ahead and insert another self-tapping screw. You can see in the video that our installer was double checking that he found a safe area to install a self-tapping screw, much like we talked about earlier. With the second self-tapping screw now in place, we use the C-clamp to clamp the far part of the mud flap to the inside of the fender liner. With 2 self-tapping screws installed and a clamp in place, remove the block of wood and adjust your wheels to allow you the maximum amount of workspace area. At this point, we elected to reinstall the screws we removed from the stock mud flaps. As you can see in the video, our installer found the location of the stock holes and drilled subsequent holes in the new mud flap. With everything in alignment, he reinstalled the stock screws, now giving us 4 permanent points of contact. With 2 self-tapping screws and 2 stock fasteners now holding the mud flap in place, only 1 more fastener is needed. Taking a look at the video, you can see our installer is drilling a hole through the mud flap and the liner. With the hole now in place, he's able to insert a screw and an automotive clip. In this case, it's also fine to use a bolt, nut, and a washer. And with that, the installation's done. Your mud flap should now be ready to provide you with years of protective coverage. We hope you found this video tutorial useful, and thanks again for choosing Truck Hardware.